Hello, I'm Ayo Akinwolere, and welcome to the Athletic FC podcast. Well, in June, the FIFA's new Club World Cup launches, but could you tell me where it's being held, who's playing in it, or what the format actually is? Well, we'll explore a lot of that today and ask, who cares about the Club World Cup? Right, with us today we have Matt Slater from The Athletic and also Adam Crafton as well. And Matt, let's start with you. You've spoken about this on previous pods, and Adam, you've definitely written about it on The Athletic, and there's some articles available right now to catch up on for our listeners. You know, with regards to the preparations, Matt, of this tournament, we've got, less than 9 months away from it starting. Let's just nail this down. Where is it at this moment, and is it actually going to go ahead?
Oh, well, you're racing to the end. Hold on. Hold on a minute. Adam's got loads to say about that, I'm sure. So what can I say about where we're at? Look, this is an idea. It's been around for a while. I'm trying to think the first time I heard Gianni Infantino talk about it. It was very early in his reign. So I think it's 2016, 2017-ish. And look, what he was saying back then wasn't that controversial. It was our club competition, this annual thing they do at the moment in the Gulf, where you get basically a final between the best team in South America and the best team in Europe, and the European team wins. Isn't that great? You know, anyone that doesn't have a team and doesn't have a dog in the fight isn't really watching. So Liverpool fans cared about it when they were in it. Man City fans care about it. Chelsea fans. And it's not a great TV product. It annoys domestic leagues in Europe. South American teams take it a bit more seriously because it is a chance for them to, bloody the nose of a European team, and the team from Africa and Oceania, and they enjoy it while they're there. But it's not a fantastic product, and it just meant that FIFA's whole economic model is so dependent on the Men's World Cup. And they have these big promises that they give to all their members, and they do a lot of good work and blah blah blah. And I'm always happy to acknowledge that there are good people there, and they are about development, and every dollar they earn, or most of them, goes back into the game. All taken. So to sort of break that reliance on that kind of 4-year feast, relative famine, they want to get into the club game. Their club product wasn't very good. Let's make it better. Right, that was the starting point, and then it was like, okay, do we enlarge it? That's always the answer. It's always bigger. Do we do it more regularly? We can't do it more regularly than every year. Do we, where do we put? So we had a couple of years of that. I think we then get to 2019. I went to the meeting. It was in Miami, and it was very contentious. It was the sort of, I was going to say the height of UEFA versus FIFA rows. It was another peak in that row. I think the main argument was about, God, there's been so many rounds. I think it might have been around the Biennial World Cup around that time, and UEFA sort of won that argument but lost this one, because UEFA, of course, one of the reasons for the tension between FIFA and UEFA is UEFA have an amazing club competition, and because they have an amazing club competition, they are richer than FIFA. So it's almost like one of those sort of medieval things where the Lord in the North is richer than the King, and that always creates tension, and there's always going to be a war. So it's a bit of that going on. UEFA weren't that excited about the idea of a Club World Cup, a potential threat to their amazing competition, but they couldn't fight it because their clubs quite like it. So that 2019 idea, I think, was for a 24-team competition. It was going to be in China. Again, that was sort of peak China football. It didn't happen. COVID all went away, and whilst it went away, I think they had a rethink. And it was Qatar. It was the sort of end of the World Cup. It was December 2022. Basically, Gianni Infantino just announced it. Just announced it. By the way, we've that 24-team thing. Yeah, it didn't happen. Well, anyway, look, we're doing 32 teams. We're doing it every 4 years. It's going to go in the slot where the Confederations Cup. Remember that one? No, you wouldn't remember it if your team wasn't in it. It was the warm-up event a year before for the World Cup. So that we're going to have this amazing club competition. It's going to be the best of the best, all the usual Infantino bravado. Away you go, sort it out. I'll do a broadcast deal in a bit, and we'll all the branding and where it will be, all to be decided. But 32 teams, and it's going to be incredible. So that's where we're at.
Okay, Adam, you've written about it, and what we do know is that it's going to be happening in the US if it does happen. Now, this is a country that's going to be one of the host countries of the World Cup. This is a country that just hosted the latest edition of Copa America. What's the appetite like for it out there? Because I don't know, in the next couple of years, I can see a lot of football being played in America.
Well, it depends who you speak to, I would say. I mean, the first thing to say is the US didn't bid for this, right? So this wasn't something the US asked for. This was something that FIFA just said they were bringing to the US. Now, that's kind of where the problem started, because if you're then trying to negotiate with venues and cities and things like that, well, you're bringing them something that they've not asked for, right? So straight away, your leverage is very, very different to what it would be in the event that all of these stadiums and cities had been part of, a bidding process and wanted this from the start, as you had with the World Cup. So that's been a big challenge. As of today, Thursday, we're still to have any venues announced for the Club World Cup next summer. I do think that will change over the next week or so. We've said this a lot of times. I've heard a lot of times over the last few months that they're close. I think this time, it is getting very, 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 very close. That's a start. In terms of the sort of general public appetite, I think most of the public don't even know what this thing is, right? If I say to someone the Club World Cup, they just think I'm talking about the World Cup and I've said it wrong, basically, right? And sometimes, it depends what level of knowledge you're talking to of a soccer fan in America, because sometimes people just think international teams are clubs and things like that, right? So without being too patronizing there to an American audience. Sponsors, I'm just going through stakeholders here. Sponsors, well, there's no sponsors yet for this competition. Broadcasters, there's no broadcasters yet announced for this competition. The reason why we think now that venues are so close is Gianni Infantino did this emergency call last week with broadcasters from around the world, in which he got on the phone, or on Zoom, I think, with lots and lots of TV networks to basically try and reassure them that A, this thing was going to happen, B, that it was going to be sensational, and he got a few clubs on as well. So I think Man City were there, the Red Bull Group were there, who else was there? Atletico Madrid were definitely there. PSG were there, but kind of in
which hats? Yeah, who was he representing?
Yeah. So Nasser. So it was an interesting thing, because Nasser Al Khelaifi, the president of PSG, well, he could be many things at the same time. So he is, simultaneously running PSG, but also beIN Sport, which is the major broadcaster in the major sports broadcaster in the Middle East, but also the chairman of the ECA, European Clubs Association. If you don't know what that is, that's kind of this group that lobbies for the interests of, well, they say they lobby for the interests of many clubs across Europe, but fundamentally they lobby for the clubs who compete regularly in the big UEFA competitions as well. So I'm trying to think which other stakeholders we've not mentioned. I mean, some of the clubs involved really, really like this idea. That's one thing to say, right? They, Chelsea, for example, I think they really like this. They've not been in a UEFA, in a big, Champions League for a couple of years. They need this, right? For all sorts of reasons, right? They need this to be big. They need the money from it.
I was going to ask, is there a windfall for the clubs that are taking part? Potentially.
But no one knows what that is yet.
All right, okay, so let's move on.
So I'll just cover that very quickly. This is a massive point, right? Because it's kind of the core of the whole thing. These clubs need to be incentivized, right? To bring their best teams, to turn out their best players. They're adding an extra month onto their season, coming off the back of a summer where you've had a Euros and a Copa America. Clubs anyway, regularly now, I mean, USA is the number one destination of choice for touring clubs. So the clubs quite like it in that this could take all the hassle out of a tour for them, right? They're not going to have to organise their own training bases. They're being paid. All of their travel will be taken care of. It's almost go on tour, but have none of the logistical hassle, right? FIFA will sort all of that. That's kind of the idea. Oh, and by the way, you'll get a big participation fee, prize money. but no one knows yet what that prize money and participation is going to be. And also nobody knows, if you've not got broadcasters and sponsors on board, where the heck that money's going to come from, right? So that's another point we can get into. We've not told people who's in it, who's actually in this competition.
Oh, blimey. Do you want to do that? Or should we take turns?
Do you want to do that? There's quite a lot of teams, but yeah, you guys split it.
But we're not going to name them all, but
Okay,
you've got kind of 12 teams from Europe. So that's teams like, we'll name a few of them. So you've got like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, PSG, Man City, Atletico Madrid, Dortmund, I think, Salzburg are there, Juventus are there, another team that have been at Porto, Benfica. So you've got some pretty big clubs. You've also got some pretty big omissions, right? If you're trying to sell this thing to America, you've not got Barcelona, you've not got Arsenal, probably at the moment second best team in the world, feels like. Liverpool, Man U, but I mean, there's a question about should they be there, but marketing wise, obviously
for the US, yeah,
obviously a big draw. So I don't think AC Milan are there. So that's another big absence as well. So you then move on, and you've got 4 teams from Africa, you've got 4 teams from Asia, 4 teams from the CONCACAF, so North, Central America, Caribbean. 1 team at... Well, go on.
I was going to say 6 teams from South America.
6 teams from South America. And I think that will bring a lot of buzz to the tournament. If you think of the US... Yeah. But interestingly, they've not got like the biggest Mexican team, which is Club America.
Adam Sports points out that there's no broadcast partner attached to it yet, Matt. But how much of this is an ego thing for Infantino? In matter of fact, it's his brainchild. Fundamentally, it has to freaking work.
Well, where does FIFA stop and Infantino's ego begin? Where's that Venn diagram? Look, of course there's an element of ego because he's come out and said this, and he spits out ideas all the time, and a few of them he's got through. This, if it happens, an enlarged World Cup. There's lots of stuff he's got through. There's stuff he hasn't got through. I mentioned one before, the Biennial World Cup. So there's definitely a bit of ego here, but underneath the ego is this sort of kind of what's FIFA for? And if FIFA isn't sitting at the top of the football tree and isn't generating money and isn't distributing money, then what's it kind of for? So I do sort of get that. That's a sort of legitimate part of this debate. I suppose when we were talking about the teams, we should explain kind of the rationale that this isn't Super League-y, right? These teams have qualified. There was clear qualification criteria, and the teams that have made it are the Confederation champions. So they are, Chelsea are there because they won the Champions League in, what was it, 21, 22? I'm getting confused now. And then, so that's the way every confederation has sort of picked its winner. And then because Europe gets 12 slots, just because that's where the interest is, Europe, I'm sure the marketing men, if it was pretty done on marketing purposes, would have way more than 12 slots, put it that way. They've done it on, you can only have 2 per country. So, sorry, there's a problem right there. There might be the biggest, if you were to do the Deloitte Money League list, there's a lot of repetition of country there. There's a lot of English teams for a start. So there's always going to be people missing out. So you do it they go then on UEFA coefficient. So that's how they've sort of filled out those slots. You've got your Champions League winners, and then the rest are the next peak player, the next best. But you can't have more than 2 per country. And that's the way the others have done it. It was a bit simpler with the others because CONMEBOL got 6 slots, Asian, African, and North Central America got 4 each. There was some repetition because some of those people did win more than one Champions League in their area, in their region. So they went then coefficient. I think the interesting one was I mentioned the Ronaldo missing bit because it is kind of important when you are trying to sell it to broadcasters and sponsors. They want the biggest, best players there. Just by the nature of doing it fairly, i.e. you've earned your place there, you're going to miss a few. It'd be quite interesting to see if they sort of gerrymander a way for Inter Miami and Messi to get there. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look like they're going to have to completely invent some I don't know, they won the Florida title, or I don't know, fair play, or we like their shirt title. They're doing well. They are doing well. They may well qualify by merit, but they haven't actually said what the merit is yet. Is it going to be the team that wins the MLS Cup, which is the thing at the end after the playoffs, where there's a lot more jeopardy? The best team from the regular season doesn't always win that. Or is it the Supporters' Shield, which is the end of season thing, which they look like they might win? So that'll be interesting to see how, because that's up. They're going to get the host spot basically, right? So
there's two host spots.
Oh, is there?
Okay. So Seattle Sounders are already there.
Oh, you're right.
Which is why, because most of these, what we do know about the venues is most of these games are going to be played on the East Coast of the States, because the Gold Cup, which is happening at the same time in the States.
That's a conflict of interest, surely, for both competitions.
Well, yeah, so that will be on the West Coast, the Gold Cup mostly. But Seattle Sounders, because they're in it, they want to give them a home. They want to give them a home game in it, which is smart.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
The market there, and there might be a stadium in LA. We're not quite sure if FIFA have been kind of balancing off stadiums against each other a little bit to create leverage in negotiations, because they don't have very much other leverage otherwise. Miami are 6 points clear in the Supporters' Shield at the moment. Someone who works in MLS for a team in MLS said to me last week that the condition for qualifying will be whichever team has the pinkest shirt.
That's completely fair. Who can argue with that?
I think it's become a bit of a running joke within MLS at this point that FIFA are going to find a way for Messi to be in it. But if for some reason, it's only 6 points, if they were to fall off in the last few weeks, and then they don't win the MLS Cup. I mean, they were even talking at one point about some sort of playoff between the winners of the Supporters' Shield and the winners of the MLS Cup. So the MLS Cup is the kind of once you get through the playoff system. So that would actually be quite an exciting game, right? If people really cared about the Club World Cup and knew what it was, right? Some playoff to qualify for it with jeopardy and everything involved. Maybe we don't like to do too much jeopardy in US sport, but that would be quite fun as well. I think Messi being there would help, but the problem, it doesn't really help FIFA at the moment because they can't guarantee it, right? So, right, we're in October almost, and they still can't say to a broadcaster he's going to be there. And also, if you just look at what it's been like since Messi's been in the States, how do you know he's going to turn up? That's the other thing, right? Like there's quite a few games, he's had knocks and he's, sometimes he doesn't play. So I think broadcasters will be wary of that. I think it will help with sponsors for sure. But it's weird at the moment because FIFA keep announcing World Cup sponsors.
Absolutely.
Another
one this week.
Right, some really strong ones, right? You've had Verizon this week, they've had Bank of America, you've had Lay's. I mean, you're talking about major US brands that really want to be involved in it. I mean, the World Cup is just going to make so much money. It's unbearable. You're talking like that. I mean, they forecast 11 billion. It'll all go to the confederations around the world, so it's great. But that will be a huge success. And the Verizon one this week even looped in as well, I think, the partnership for the 2027 Women's World Cup. What's been strange with all these deals is none of them are including the Club World Cup.
No.
And as far as I know that for at least one of those deals, the company involved wasn't even offered the chance to make it part of the same partnership. And I think that is because FIFA thought they were going to get 8, 9, 10 massive sponsorships for the Club World Cup at almost 2/3 of the World Cup level kind of thing, right?
They did. They absolutely did.
And that's not happening, right, at the moment. And there's one issue with this which is really quite interesting, and it's been basically an ongoing battle between FIFA and their existing sponsors. But so you've got this issue with Adidas and InBev, who own Budweiser, who have basically been saying there's a clause in our FIFA contracts that says World Cup, blah, 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 and other FIFA competitions, right? At that point, the Club World Cup hadn't really been like revamped and reorganized, but they've basically been saying, we already sponsor this thing. We've already paid for it. So first of all, we don't really want to give you any more money because we've already sponsored this thing. And secondly, you can't now go and sell a whole raft of sponsorship to competitors, right? For this space. The other bit which might be quite interesting with sponsors is whether something FIFA usually do for a World Cup is they clean the stadium, right? So cleaning the stadium basically means, so if you were playing a game at Arsenal and it was during the World Cup, FIFA wouldn't want it to be called the Emirates Stadium. They'd want it to be called FIFA Stadium North London, right? FIFA Stadium Highbury and Islington. In the same way, somewhere like Atlanta, for example, during this upcoming World Cup is sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, well, FIFA already have a car sponsor, Hyundai, right? So this is going to be one of the really interesting things which actually reveals how strong or weak FIFA's leverage has been during these negotiations, because if FIFA haven't managed to clean the stadiums, that basically tells us they found it really tough, right? Because they've had to make sacrifices that they wouldn't usually make for other competitions.
Earlier, we were talking about, what this actually means for the US and what it means for the US hosting it. So the Club World Cup is going to be hosted there a year out from co-hosting the World Cup and Canada and Mexico in 2026. Now, to get more insight stateside of what this tournament could represent for the hosts, here's the Athletics' Felipe Cardenas.
So something that I have been asked often ever since it became official that the Club World Cup would be coming to the US is how valuable will it be ahead of a 2026 World Cup that will be held in North America, with the majority of matches being held in the US. So, I think it depends on what you mean by valuable. Clearly, there's going to be a lot of money made during this tournament next summer. I think a lot of rich individuals are going to get richer. That tends to happen when tournaments come to the US. Go back to what Major League Soccer Commissioner Don Garber told us at The Athletic last year. He described the US market as the ATM of the soccer world, meaning there's a large fan base here. It's a growing market for soccer. The crowds are expected to be big. When these major European clubs come to the US, they always are during the summer tours. And so clearly they're going to capitalize on that. And then again, the world will see the infrastructure that exists here in the US, the state-of-the-art facilities, the stadiums. I think more than anything, it's another opportunity and a bigger opportunity for FIFA to course correct on what happened during the 2024 Copa America here in the US. Yes, that was a major tournament. A lot of people watched it, but there were some, poor attendances at certain stadiums. The marketing was poor by CONMEBOL. So I think that's something that FIFA will certainly try to correct next summer.
Yeah, Matt, FIFA trying to correct some of the wrongs of the Copa America, which they just held, which we saw. I mean, stadium raids, all that kind of stuff. It was kind of really strange, and also low attendances. But also that point about sort of America being the ATM for soccer, I thought was really interesting, because I'm trying to think who needs this tournament. And also, are we at a point where even America, it's an emerging market, a profitable market, gets football fatigue?
I suppose that's a risk. I mean, if you talk to people in the US, and Adam lives there and talks to them all the time, he doesn't have a choice unless he's correct. They say that there's almost like this insatiable appetite. They use terms like inflection point, moment in time. This is it, right? I know we've had a few of these before. If you go back to the 80s, and et cetera, et cetera. No, this is really it. I know there's a joke, isn't there? It's the fastest growing sport in America for 50 years. But it feels a bit like basketball in England. But anyway, it's that kind of time. And you're right, they had a good summer in terms of stuff to look at. There were definitely some issues, ticketing and just fan culture, and lots of stuff to be explored and improved there. I think they will. I mean, there's an element of practice. US crowds are very different to traditional football crowds, so that's something to watch. They have got this amazing kind of portfolio, this inventory, this run of stuff coming. So Club World Cup, 2026 the World Cup, 27 there's a gap, 28 LA Olympics. They're talking about a bid for the Women's World Cup in 2031. Is that right? Yeah. So there's this sort of run, right? And there's definite momentum growing all the time. So I don't think the problem is Americans rocking up to watch this. It is, well, certainly not the bigger games. I think everyone is going to struggle if they get the stadiums wrong. Dare I say, if it's Auckland versus Ulsan or the Urawa Red Diamonds or Al Ain playing, I don't know, well, actually that'll be all right. The Mexican teams will be good, but there's plenty of games there on that list of teams that have qualified that are going to be tough sells. So that is a problem. That'd be a problem for anyone, anywhere. It's a big tournament. It's a new tournament, and I think what he was saying around the sponsors is interesting, right? Because they've tried to carve something out new. That was the row they're having with their existing sponsors. And they tried to sort of set up this new brand. It was going to be called the Mundial de Club. They kind of talked about that endlessly. They've quietly dropped that because it's like, Mundial de what? We're going to go with Club World Cup. Right? We're all agreed we're going Club World Cup. Now so you're like, oh my God. So there you were definitely trying to create something new. A new piece of inventory to sell to new people. And it didn't work. And I see the same with the broadcast, right? So we had... for a year, maybe not quite a year, but it felt like a year because there was nothing else going on, that this was going to be big. It's going to be Apple. It's going to be streaming, direct to consumer. The model was the Messi arrival with MLS, $1 billion, because Infantino had been running around basically telling people, again, it's another one I sort of witnessed. It was the Congress in Rwanda, which I think was last year. He repeated it again. This is going to be worth $1 billion, guys. $1 billion plus. This is going to be brilliant. And because of that big number, the big clubs, Real, those guys, you're all going to get 50 to 100 million. Bring your stars, bring them. This is not a summer tournament, friendly tournament. This is, you want to win this one. And I got the first cracks in that. Hold on a minute, where's the TV deal? Because none of this really works for that TV deal. The ticketing, great, helps kind of pay for it, but how do you actually, really put the money on the table for the clubs? It's got to be a broadcast deal. People started saying to me, I'm not sure Apple really going to go for this at that sort of rate. Does it really work? And if Apple do it, what do the sponsors think? And why would anyone want to pick up the highlights? Where do you get other sort of deals if you're giving it to one company globally? And I'm just not sure. So I just kept hearing complaints and moans about it. And you start to realise there's no way they're getting that much money. No way. None. And then the pressure just mounts on FIFA. And I think they've now boxed themselves into a bit of a corner where it's the product hasn't even started yet, but it looks a bit diminished. It looks a bit tarnished. They've itsy bitsy bits come out, like we hear nothing, and then they suddenly go, here's our new emblem, and it looks like a sort of crypto token. It looks really kind of cheap and rubbish. I've already forgotten it. And they released the audio signature, which is Gala's Free From Desire. I really do hope, which I don't mind as a song, but I really hope they didn't spend a lot of money on a consultancy sorting that one out. Because did they go to one game? Was the choice Seven Nation Army versus, I don't know, Enter Sandman? And how many songs were on their shortlist? The lack of imagination is staggering, and that's where we're at. If you haven't got a TV deal, and I think it's going to be TV deals now, which is hard work, and this is again, I don't want to add another complexity. FIFA have got this other great idea. Another one of Johnny's great ideas, and I could throw some more in here where he, again, has sort of bitten off more he could chew. The famous one is the row he had with EA Games over FIFA. They gave him some money, almost free money, and he went, no, we want more. And they went, no, okay, fine, see you later. And of course, another one of his ideas where he got a bit, I think, carried away with himself was when he basically said to EA Games, I want more money for the name of FIFA on your computer game. And they went, no. So he's now left without a gaming partner. It's this FIFA Plus, this streaming platform that FIFA have had running in the background almost unnoticed. This inventory of thousands of games, basically FIFA international qualifiers, underage games, women's games, whatever, that no one really cares about unless your team's in it, unless you maybe know someone playing in the game. Could that be the solution for the broadcaster? Now, they've actually just gone to market looking for, pluck another number out of the air, $2 billion to really invest in this platform. Maybe, and this is where I think all the conspiracy theories are going, this is where you start to think, well, who could really help FIFA out here, make all their Club World Cup problems go away, make their FIFA Plus problems go away, and energize and give FIFA the money they want? Saudi Arabia. So then we pivot from this one amazing market that everyone is obsessed with now to the next market, or the market that's already there but is going to get more and more important in the 2030s. And that's where I think this is really interesting. There are kind of almost like two poles right now. It's North America, everyone can see North America, we have to be in North America. Gulf money, well, obviously we just went there with Qatar. Saudi's the next one. We're going there in 2034. Could we somehow tie what we're trying to do right now to Saudi, and then Saudi get to sort of own international football in 2034, but they also maybe get to own club football as well? There's a lot of best case scenario going on there, but that I think is their way out of it.
Yeah, Adam, I guess the other question is, and perhaps I'm looking through a European lens here, is that do we need more football matches? We had Maheta Molango on, CEO of the PFA, and he was talking about players like Rodri, obviously, who's now crocked, and we saw against the game versus Arsenal, I should say, but also fundamentally, his gripe was that people like the PFA aren't consulted when these kind of tournaments are rolled out. They're just told that there's a tournament and they need to figure out how player welfare works. I mean, do European players, in particular with this lens, need that much more football?
Well, no, they don't. I mean, you look at the calendar. If football's going to continue the way it currently is, without any restrictions on the amount of minutes a player can play in a calendar year, then clearly we're at a point where it's very excessive. I couldn't believe it the other night, where I just sort of turned on the TV at 3:00 in the afternoon in the States, and Man City were on again, like within 48 hours of playing against Arsenal, and there were different reasons for that, but it was you're just like looking at like, again, what? Like I've not even finished reading about Arsenal Man City on Sunday, and they're already playing. No, it's an issue. I mean, I'm not sure that every individual players association around the world needs to be consulted on every new tournament. I think PFA maybe has slight delusions of grandeur there in terms of their involvement. FIFA Pro, as the global organisation, maybe have a fairer point in that. I think there's a lot of battles at the moment about, everyone keeps talking about this word consultation. We're not being consulted. We're not being consulted. What they mean is, just translate this as, we're not in control, right? We're not in control. The Premier League, we're not being consulted. We're not being consulted. It means we're not in control. We're not making enough out of it. That's where I'm talking about the leagues and UEFA. I think with the players, I'm not sure the players necessarily are opposed to the Club World Cup once they actually get into it, because it will be, in the States, playing against pretty big teams, trophy potentially at the end of it. If the conceptually quite a good idea, I think.
But some are being vocal, though. I mean, the likes of Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne in the past has said, like, it's a lot of football. But they're probably looking ahead thinking, I've just played how much? I've just done the Euros, I've just done the Premier League, I've just done the Champions League. I mean, that's a particular echelon of player, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, they could also say to their manager, you've got a decent squad, maybe rest me every so often, right? Just to play devil's advocate here, Rodri should not have played as much football as he has over the past couple of years if Man City had signed a better player than Calvin Phillips, right? That's an example of where a club's recruitment has gone wrong, and it's had a knock-on impact on how many minutes Rodri's had to play. And also because he's just like bloody brilliant, right? He's an unbelievable footballer who has become, he could have won the Ballon d'Or this year. So there's an issue there. I think where I will defend FIFA on this is, at the moment, we're talking about, FIFA are bringing in a new competition. Well, okay, but UEFA have also brought in new competitions with the Nations League as well, right? You also had a competition in that slot already with the Confederations Cup, so it's not creating a new, it's not another slot altogether. I'm sure maybe the volume's gone up in some way. And the other thing to say is, Premier League, well, what were Newcastle and Tottenham doing at the end of last season? Going off to Australia on tour, right? What was, I think, 10 Premier League clubs in the summer went to the US on tour. if you speak to a lot of the fans who went to those games in the US, I think they are reaching a point where they're like, we want these games to mean something if you're going to absolutely rinse us for our money. These games aren't cheap. When Chelsea play Real Madrid in Charlotte or Chelsea play Man City in Ohio, the clubs do very, very well out of it. So, and even this summer, the Premier League's currently working with this US media and events group, Relevant Sport, to bring a Premier League summer series with NBC back to the States. The Bundesliga, right? The Bundesliga, who are like the most, we think of German football as the most conservative force going. They've just done a deal with Relevant. I think it's definitely over 10 years, that deal. And they're trying to do a summer tournament next year in the States. So all these leagues can't really keep moaning to FIFA saying, you're doing too much, you're doing too much. What they mean is, we're not getting enough out of it, right? So there's two different points to this. There's the leagues being in competition and UEFA being in competition with the Champions League, with the Club World Cup. But there is also then the far more legitimate player welfare argument. And I do wonder over the next few years how that's going to impact. Is it something like a player can only play a set number of minutes, and actually a club has to abide by that, and a national team over the course of the season? I mean, how you balance that up between the club and a nation, I don't know. But and then the other question on that, sorry, I know I'm sort of blabbing on a bit here. The other question to that is, okay, you're going to play less football, maybe you'll get paid a bit less. Are the players prepared to accept that, right? Because the only reason the money can keep coming as it is because you keep doing all these things to create growth. Sometimes the way football's talking, it sounds like almost malignant, right? This growth. And we always have to keep growing. I mean, the Premier League's pretty big. I'm not sure, actually, you need to always be growing, right? You're pretty big. So that's another question, right? You want to play less football? Do you want to make a bit less money?
I've got a question for you. You've heard me and Adam banging on now, the pros and cons.
Good question.
Yeah. Do you want this tournament?
I generally don't want to watch Arsenal again.
His team aren't in it.
Arsenal aren't in it, but I generally don't want to. I mean, do you know what it is? Even working in the game, even working in the industry, everyone needs rest, Matt. Everyone needs to recharge. Everyone needs to rethink. We need to come back with the zest of enthusiasm for the sport that we all love. Right. And for that, you need rest. And I'm not even playing the game. So that's where I'm sitting going, actually, Do you know what? I've had a great season. Let's go on holiday. Let me see my family. Let me see my kids. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a no. And then my question to Adam, you're sitting there, you're in those conversations. Is this going to happen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I really do think this is going to happen. Once the venues are announced, I mean, it's hard to see it not happening. I mean, if the venues were announced and then it doesn't happen, I mean, the stadiums are just going to cash in a load of money that FIFA are going to owe them. So, I mean, it'll happen, and I think that the big head-to-heads will be really, really successful. If you get Real Madrid against Man City and Real Madrid against Chelsea and Boca Juniors against Juventus and games like that, I think those games will do really well. There'll be a mix of NFL and MLS stadia, so they're not being daft, right? They're not just putting, the team from Auckland in against the team from South Korea in an NFL stadium. And I think they also have to be smart about the markets they use, right? So if you're working with a Korean team, can we get you into a market where there's a big Korean population within the state? So can we get you, I don't know, LA or New York, New Jersey, or DC, and be smart about that, right? And they have to I don't know how much thinking they're doing on things like that, but they should be. They should be working with the clubs and trying to maximize those games, because some of those games could end up looking really good actually as a broadcast experience if they're in MLS stadia.
Yeah. We should probably just say a little bit just about the format. It's basically the traditional World Cup format, isn't it? It's 8 groups of 4 and then a straight knockout.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That's a lot of games, right? And that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time to think about for people, because the other thing is some of these games are going to be. I only realised this the other day, but some of these games are going to be in the middle of the day in the US,
Yep.
right? So people are going to have to take off work to go to these games. I can't imagine at the moment people thinking about taking off work to go and see a tournament they don't really know anything about.
Yeah.
Right.
How about temperature? Mid-June to mid-July?
Yeah, depending if you're in the southern states, it's absolutely roasting.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I mean, this summer East Coast. I mean, it is largely East Coast. I mean, I think we're pretty safe to say, we're looking at New York, New Jersey.
But New York in the summer, Adam, is hell. It's not easy.
I know. I just lived it. It's humid.
Yeah.
But I would say June's a little easier. I would say, July, August is horrendous. July gets pretty bad, and this tournament does go into July. But June is a little bit easier, I would say. But it depends. If some of these games start going down to, if there's a game in Texas, I'm not sure there will be after the Gold Cup announcements. Yesterday seems pretty Texas heavy, but I think you're looking at sort of New York and DC and Philly and Atlanta and which other market? Miami, obviously, will get some games as well. Orlando should be involved. So, Nashville, I think, might be involved, which is a pretty strong sort of MLS market as well. So there's, it is going to be hot. I mean, we can't do anything about it. I mean, even Gianni Infantino hasn't made promises about the weather yet.
Okay, well, let's end it there, gents. Thanks so much for your time, Matt, Adam, and thank you all for listening as well. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.